Good morning. Thank you for joining me. I am Diana Batten, the Alberta NDP MLA for Calgary-Acadia and the official opposition critic for Childcare, Child and Family Services. We are gathered on the traditional territories of Treaty 6, and I also want to acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. Before I begin, I would like to say that my heart goes out to all those affected by the E. coli outbreak. And I want them to know that every member of our Alberta NDP caucus is thinking about you and will do whatever we can to support you. We are hoping for a rapid and full recovery for all those affected. And we are committed to relentlessly pressing for answers on how this preventable crisis could have been allowed to happen, and that proper action is taken to ensure it never happens again. And it's with that last part in mind that I call this press conference today. On Friday, we learned that 342 lab-confirmed cases of E. coli are now connected to this outbreak. It was also announced that there are 6 additional daycare centers where children have tested positive. 12 children in hospital, 10 have hemolytic uremic syndrome, and 6 are receiving dialysis. This has become one of the largest E. coli outbreaks in Canadian history. Hundreds of families are fearful and anxious. They want assurances that something this horrific will never happen again. In recent days, I've spoken to many families directly impacted, including some with children recovering. The overwhelming feedback I've received is that they felt left down and abandoned by the government's delay in responding to this crisis. They feel insulted by the lack of compassion and leadership shown by the UCP government, and they don't feel assured that there will be any proper accountability or transparency, or that the necessary changes will be made. We know that the kitchen at the center of this outbreak has been cited for numerous public health infractions, yet it continued to operate. It continued to provide food to several daycares across Calgary, and for 5 months, that kitchen was not inspected. We know that a number of daycares where positive E. coli cases have been found struggled with proper sterilization. These issues were detailed in multiple inspection reports that highlighted various infractions, including the internal temperature of food from an external source not being taken or recorded, not having a working thermometer required for sanitization processes, and not properly sanitizing common areas and using a sanitizer weaker than required. One daycare was found in a January inspection to have no sanitizer in their kitchen. The same violation was found at the same site in an earlier inspection in October, and that inspection also found that the refrigerator was several degrees higher than required. Clearly, not enough was being done to keep our kids safe. Public health violations were not properly dealt with, and there appears to be a serious breakdown in health inspection processes. And so it is with all of these problems and failures in mind that I'm calling for an immediate, independent public inquiry into this catastrophic disaster. Anything less will not give Albertans the answers they deserve. We still don't know the exact cause of this outbreak, and we don't know why it was able to spread so fast and so far. There is an AHS investigation, and while public health does incredibly important work, there must be a focus on getting answers to the underlying cause of this crisis and the failure of the system to prevent it. Put bluntly, we cannot trust the UCP government to investigate themselves. We need to ensure transparency and accountability, and the final results of the investigation need to restore public trust that has been so greatly shattered during this crisis. We need to know why the shared kitchen at the center of this outbreak was able to remain open and serve food to children despite numerous critical red flags found by public investigators. And we need to know if the violations found at several daycare sites by AHS investigators were a cause in allowing this infection to spread. The investigation I'm demanding needs to be led by someone who can also assess the methods and the efficiency of the communication coming from this government, or failed communication, because families need to hear from their government. We know that several families moved their children to another daycare after positive E. coli cases were discovered at their regular daycare center. What we don't know is whether they were told to not do this, or whether they're ever warned of the risks of spreading E. coli, specifically concerning secondary transmissions. Over the weekend, the Premier on her radio show seemed to blame these families for the spread, while I blame her government and their lack of communication with these families. And this inquiry I'm calling for today needs to begin immediately, not months down the line. There is no reason for this delay. Danielle Smith should be able to commit to an inquiry being led by a distinguished and impartial, nonpartisan figure. And that person will be appointed right away. We would be happy to provide some suggestions. Now, before I wrap up, there's one other concern that I would like to address, also from the Premier Smith's radio show on Saturday. I could not believe that Danielle Smith mused about asking Preston Manning to add this to his so-called public health care review. Let me be clear, this is a horrible idea. Preston Manning has openly denied science and spun several damaging conspiracy theories concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. He has zero credibility to lead this public inquiry, or any public inquiry for that matter. Let's get down to the bottom of this. Let's give Albertans the answers they deserve. Let's listen to science and reason. And let's pledge collectively to never let this happen again. Alberta's children deserve better. Thank you so much, and I will take whatever questions you have.
Thank you. Just a reminder to get to the question queue is the raise hand function on Zoom, *9. If you're on the phone, we'll go to our first caller. Catherine, your line is open.
So as you mentioned, we don't know the cause of the outbreak. Why do you think we need an independent investigation before we know what was actually behind it?
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine, for that question. So I would say that right now there are steps we could take. Public health could be doing more under the leadership of this government. They could be, while we're waiting to find out the exact cause of this outbreak, evidence obviously shows us there was a breakdown in public health inspections, and so those type of things could be happening right away. The reason we want an external, independent investigation is because we need folks who are not invested in the answer or whatever the cause was. We need folks that are not vested in, I guess, any. We need folks who have no vested interest in the outcome of this investigation. So we need folks who are completely impartial, who are simply there with facts, who will follow the research and provide our best guidance to help our children.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
How do we know that it's connected to any of the violations that were reported?
No,
if we don't know the, yeah.
Sorry, Catherine. Did you finish your question? Okay, no, my bad, thanks. So the reality is we don't know yet. But when you think about food safety handling, when you think about how E. coli is transmitted, these are things that very much are connected usually to food. And the fact that these children were served food from sources from a common kitchen. This is why we suspect that. Of course, the speculation from the Premier was that children who had been exposed to the coli outbreak then moved to other daycare centres. Again, this is speculation as far as I know, but it's certainly something to be looking at. We're really concerned that parents and families weren't given the right instructions or the most accurate recommendations so that they could keep themselves and other families safe.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll go to our next caller. Aaron, your line is open now.
Hello. Hi. This is Ian Munskani from the Calgary Herald. Just had a question about how you would ensure the people investigating this issue would be impartial completely.
No, really good question. Thank you. And so part of that would be moving external to, obviously, well, maybe even to Alberta, right? There are health authorities, health bodies in other provinces who could certainly conduct this type of investigation for us. There's infectious disease organizations and specialists who could step in and support. I think the biggest thing would be to remove any of the biases, right, and that vested interest. And the easiest way to do that is to have that external investigation.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay. We'll just do one more pass for questions. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the radio. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Seeing none, that concludes our press conference for today. Thank you.
Thank you.